For the longest time, I was pretty convinced that a World War II Assassin's Creed game just wouldn't work, and I had my reasons. It always felt too close to the modern day, like the environments just wouldn't feel right, the weaponry would be too advanced and modern, and the whole thing would just end up feeling more like a third-person shooter than an actual Assassin's Creed game. But I'll be honest, I've completely changed my mind. I genuinely think a World War II Assassin's Creed game could work, and work really well, but only if it followed a more linear structure, not open world like we have with Origins, Odyssey and so on. Just focused, story-driven, stealth-heavy gameplay, something more intimate, and we've already had a few glimpses of how a World War Assassin's Creed game could work. Take the Lydia Fry segment in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I thought that was handled really well, and even those time anomaly sections in Unity where Arno ends up in World War II. That was short, but it showed that the setting can absolutely feel like Assassin's Creed. So with that in mind, I've decided to sit down and brainstorm a full concept for what a World War II Assassin's Creed game could actually look like. Now just a heads up, I'm not going to go too deep here. I could easily make this video 4 hours long if I really wanted to by explaining every system, every mission, and every historical reference in full detail. So this one is going to focus more on the core concept, the setting, the vibe, the gameplay mechanics, and what kind of story we'd be stepping into. I want to focus more on what this franchise is missing with traditional black box missions, disguise systems, a more linear structure, and so on. Also, if you've ever written your own idea for a hypothetical Assassin's Creed game and you want me to cover it in a video like this, feel free to shoot me an email at thehiddenoneac@gmail.com. I've already received some pretty interesting concepts, and who knows, your idea might be the next one I dive into. Anyway, enough talking. Here's what a World War II Assassin's Creed game could look like. Let's start with the premise and the setting. So the game would be called Assassin's Creed Resistance, and the name is very fitting. It's set in one of the darkest chapters of modern history, Nazi-occupied France, between 1940 and 1944. And yes, we are returning to France. The whole setting is grim and quite grounded. You've got cities that are spread with, propaganda, you've got curfews enforced around the clock, and alleyways that feel more dangerous than safe. In fact, sometimes the shadows are the safest place to be, because out in the open, that's where people disappear. This game will follow our protagonist Patrice Dorian, who is a reluctant freedom fighter. Now, as you can tell by the surname, Patrice Dorian is in fact a descendant of Arno Dorian, who we know from Assassin's Creed Unity. But don't expect him to be similar to Arno in that he'll be charming and a flashy assassin. Instead, Patrice isn't in this for the reasons Arno is. Instead, he's just trying to survive. I'll go over Patrice more in depth quite soon. So this game is set during World War II, and the Assassin Brotherhood in Europe are pretty much falling apart. Years of fighting among themselves, and now these rising totalitarian regimes, which are basically governments that control everything and crush any kind of freedom, have pushed the assassins deeper underground than ever before. Meanwhile, the Nazis, who are backed by a new wave of Templars, are hunting down a particular artifact, something called a cipher disk. Now, what this cipher disk is an ancient ezio relic that can affect enemy communications, meaning they could tap into and manipulate messages between the Allies and Axis powers. And just to keep things simple, if you don't know what Allies and Axis means in terms of the war, the Allies were the good guys, countries like Britain, France and the US, and the Axis were the aggressors, mainly Germany, Italy and Japan. In this game, the Brotherhood as we know are not exactly in the greatest state, and they're clinging to survival through fragile partnerships with the French resistance, who mainly consist of regular people fighting back in secret. Now, with the Assassin's Creed World War II game, the story will mainly be about survival and essentially standing up for what is right, even when the world feels completely broken. The game will move through occupied Paris with its barricade boulevards and secret hideouts, venture into Lyon and Vichy where collaborationists pose as patriots, and infiltrate the heart of the enemy in Berlin, where an ancient ezio vault hides beneath the Reichstag building. But these locations will be more story focused and not open areas. The story explores what happens when one man, somebody who never wanted to fight, gets pulled into a centuries-old war that's now bleeding into the most destructive conflict in human history. And yeah, there we have it. Now we have a premise for what this game will be like. It's good to get a great understanding before we dive more in depth with the characters and so on. Okay, so now let's go over the man of the hour, the character that we'll be playing as throughout our World War II game. Now, our main character, as you know, is called Patrice Dorian, but with this character, I've decided to change up the formula quite a bit, and not have him as a traditional Assassin's Creed protagonist like, your Ezio or Arno, where you can tell what their main characteristics are. Patrice will be different. He's quiet, clever, and honestly, he'd rather be anywhere else. Patrice is French-Algerian, and before the war, he was a linguist. The kind of man who spent his time decoding ancient text, not, sneaking around with a hidden blade. He worked as a code breaker for the French military, translating enemy communications and breaking down encryption. But when the Nazis overran France, Matthias was captured early on, thrown into a POW camp, forgotten, and that right there is where the story really begins. He escapes during a bombing raid, alone and on the run, and even then he's not some hero in the making, he's just trying to stay alive at this point. But the world does not give him a choice. One thing leads to another and Matthias somehow ends up pulled into a war that he never signed up for, both the literal war and the secret one that's been raging on for centuries between the Assassins and Templars. He's 28 years old, young enough to move fast but old enough to know better. He speaks French, Arabic, German and English, which becomes a huge gameplay mechanic when infiltrating enemy ranks or gathering intel. I'll get into that part later in the video. And while he's not a trained soldier, his background in cryptography and stealth make him a pretty silent threat in occupied territory. Now, in terms of personality wise, Matthias is kind of witty, but he's also pretty jaded. He's somebody that does not believe in grand causes. Well, not at first. He questions authority, questions the Brotherhood, and honestly questions whether any of this is going to matter in the end. But, deep down he's got a conscience, and that right there is what makes him dangerous. Not his hidden blade, not his bloodline and ties to Arno, but the fact that he cares, when it would be easier not to. He's not a chosen one, he's not trying to become a legend, he's just trying to do something good before it's too late. And so that's our main protagonist for the game. I do think that this was a pretty good choice. Now, we need to go over our characters that we'll encounter and meet throughout the game, and I've noticed that in recent Assassin's Creed games since Syndicate, the quality of side characters has definitely regressed and quite a lot. But not this time. In this game, these characters will be of importance, and will be of importance in similarity to how we had great historical figures in games like Syndicate and Unity. Now, first of all, let's talk about our assassin mentor. If there is one character that holds this fragile world together, it's Etienne Renaud, the assassin mentor of occupied France. Now, Renaud is not the kind of leader who rouses crowds or dives straight into battle. He's something else entirely, a man shaped by failure and survival. He's a mentor that's very calm and composed, and carries a quiet weight in every word he speaks. Think similar to Haytham Kenway or Basim, but a more modern version. Before the war, he was a philosophy professor at the Sorbonne, a university in Paris, and he was someone who studied ideas, taught students, and probably thought the world could be reasoned with. But yeah, that world is long gone. When the Nazis marched into Paris, Renaud had a choice. He could flee and save himself or stay behind and fight a losing war. He chose the latter. He vanished into the shadows just like the Brotherhood itself and started rebuilding it, not as a grand order but as whispers in alleyways, coded messages on paper scraps, and a spark in the hearts of those who had not given up. He's in his late 40s with a greying beard, worn out spectacles and a long coat that blends in with the resistance. He doesn't wear assassin robes. In fact, he doesn't carry a flashy hidden blade. His greatest weapon is his mind. Renaud sees something in our protagonist Matthias that even Matthias doesn't see in himself. Not just the legacy of Arno Dorian, but a spark, a chance to restore the ideals of the Brotherhood, not with speeches or symbols, but with quiet, unshakable defiance. He doesn't push Matthias to be a hero, he pushes him to endure, to fight smart, and to survive long enough to pass on what matters. I want Etienne Renaud to be not just a generic mentor, but to be the very soul of the story, a remnant of a time when the Brotherhood meant something. And in a world torn apart by propaganda and control, he is one of the last people left who still believes in free will. Another important character for our World War II Assassin's Creed game is Elise Morau. Now, she is Matthias' childhood friend, and one of the few people he still trusts. She is also kind of a love interest for Matthias, but it's not implicitly obvious. There will be signs throughout the game though. She's also not an assassin. In fact, she does not care about ancient wars or secret orders. What she does care about is people. She's a character that was written to be very fierce, very loyal and willing to put herself on the line. She's also a leader within the French resistance and becomes Matthias' anchor, reminding him why the fight matters, especially when everything starts to feel pointless. Every great Assassin's Creed game needs a cold, calculated villain, and excuse my pronunciation with this name, but Heinrich Bauer is the man for that role. He's a high-ranking SS officer and a Templar to the core, and he's somebody that is not driven by pure hatred, but instead he's driven by order. He believes that the cipher disk, which I talked about in the premise part of the video, and the Eastern technology behind it can create a world free of chaos. No lies, no rebellion, just straight up obedience. I think this is what we need more in villains, especially in today's day and age. Villains to me are supposed to be evil with no forgiving aspect to them. I can't remember the last time we had something similar to that, so this will bring that type of villain back. Anyway, through the Cypherdisc artifact, Heinrich Bauer uses mind control and illusion, twisting reality to get what he wants. To him, free will is just inefficient. You may be thinking, why not have Adolf Hitler as a main villain? But I do think that's too generic, and I also don't think that's the wisest decision, especially in the snowflake generation that we live in today. Now, there are plenty of other characters in this game, but those ones I mentioned are the ones that I feel need the attention towards because they will be important throughout the story. But I will go over the other characters too that will appear in this game. Some will be based on real historical people, because after all, this is an Assassin's Creed game, and historical figures do play a big role as side characters. One side character will be Jean Moulin, a real-life resistance hero. In this World War II Assassin's Creed story, Moulin is an official ally of the Assassins, coordinating messages, passing coded instructions, and helping Matisse connect with important resistance cells across France. His involvement is very, how would you say, under the radar, but what he does is super important. He believes in freedom, but he's also somebody who questions whether the assassins are still the right ones for it. Another real historical character will be Wilhelm Canaris, and he is the head of the German Military Intelligence Service. Unlike most Nazi officials, Canaris has a very shady way of seeing things. Funnily enough, he's actually suspicious of Heinrich Bauer and the Templars, and he may even provide assistance to Matisse at certain points, especially if it means destabilizing SS control. His true allegiance, well, that's simply unknown. Another real historical figure is going to be Philippe Pétain, who was the leader of Vichy France. In the game, Pétain is portrayed as a puppet ruler, unwittingly manipulated by the Templars. His role shows how propaganda and soft power can be more dangerous than brute force. He doesn't appear often in this game, but his decisions shape the world Matisse has to navigate. Moving on from real historical people, an original character will be Adira Kassim, an Algerian-French forger and saboteur with ties to both the Brotherhood and underground resistance in North Africa. Adira helps Matisse bypass checkpoints, forge travel documents and set up missions in Vichy. She's street smart, unshakable, and challenges Matisse's view of what resistance really means, especially as somebody from a colonized country. Another character is Augustin Lambert, a young assassin in training from Lyon. He's somebody that is very idealistic and hot-headed, and is deeply inspired by old legends of Altair and Ezio. He represents the new blood of the Brotherhood, eager but not yet ready. His arc is about learning restraint and the cost of rushing into battle. Maybe this eagerness will cost him in the story, who knows. The last character will be Father Marcel Chevalier, and as you can tell by the name, he's a choir priest in a bombed out Paris church who secretly shelters resistance fighters and guards the Isu artifact Matisse discovers early in the story. Father Marcel Chevalier is not an assassin, but he knows of their creed and believes in their cause, a symbol of quiet faith in dark times. So one of the core pillars of Assassin's Creed Resistance is the urban stealth system. In this game, the cities that we encounter won't just be visual. Think the dense street layouts and vertical level design from Assassin's Creed Unity, but more claustrophobic, more hostile. So every district in occupied Paris has its own kind of feel. We want to move away from copy-pasted designs. Some districts are under heavy patrol, others are hiding resistance cells in plain sight. You'll be moving through alleyways, slipping past curfews, sneaking across rooftops or diving into basements to avoid detection. Unlike games like Unity, the focus here is less about how nice looking the parkour is, and more about precise movement and decision making, back to how the Ezio trilogy parkour felt, but with more modern looking animations. But here's the twist with this game. You're not doing any of this alone. As you progress through the game, you'll be able to recruit resistance members, upgrade safe houses, and unlock access to black market gear. Now these upgrades matter a lot. Smuggling routes open up shortcuts, radio operators can disrupt Nazi patrols, safe houses offer rest and resupply points. Now if you have played Dying Light, you will know that throughout the city, there are things that you can interact with to change gameplay, like a jump pad, zip lines around the city, or car traps, and so on. In this game, it will be kind of similar. The environment will be used to your advantage, so that's things like triggering false alarms, setting traps, or calling in a resistance ambush to help you escape tight spots. You're always outnumbered, always outgunned, but remember, you are an assassin, so you are never outsmarted. In this game, we'll be bringing back a similar feature to what we had in Unity, where you could become somebody else. But it's not going to be as stupid as Unity, where you literally change into that character. I always thought that was a bit stupid. The disguise system in this game allows you to acquire uniforms and outfits that grant access to restricted areas. Want to infiltrate a German bunker? You'll need an officer's uniform. Need to eavesdrop on a Vichy meeting? Well, you can dress like a city official. Or let's say you're trying to sneak into a church after curfew. A priest's robes might do the trick. Each disguise opens new doors. But there's a catch, and of course there is. Every role has its limits. Act strangely so that running, climbing, drawing a weapon, and you'll raise suspicion fast. NPCs react to your behavior. A resistance courier acting like a soldier is a red flag. A German officer wandering too close to a restricted room, also a red flag. It's not a magic cloak, it's a role you have to play. Similar to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, where during the Italy segments you could disguise yourself, but you had to be careful. Some disguises are earned through missions, others bought through resistance contacts, or even stolen off enemies if you're bold enough. But they all serve one purpose: to turn the enemy's own systems against them. Manipulation is pretty much what I'm going for here. So as I said, Matthias Dorian, our protagonist, has a background with code breaking, and in this game, information is your most powerful weapon, and you'll be given tools to uncover it your way. First, you have the interrogation system. After tailing or capturing enemy officers, you can choose how far to push. Do you intimidate, bribe, play good cop, or go full brotherhood and eliminate them after getting what you need? And all of these decisions will be impactful, because your choices matter. Some prisoners might lie, some crack quickly, and some lead you into traps if you're too trusting. Then there's code breaking, which ties into Matthias' background as a former linguist and cryptographer. If you don't know what code breaking is, it's pretty much deciphering encrypted messages, which was a very important tool for intelligence gathering, and in the real war, it saved so many lives. So in this game, you'll decrypt Nazi ciphers, intercept enemy messages, and unlock hidden locations or mission paths through puzzle mechanics. I don't want to make this too overwhelming, but more so simple. So think analog machines, rotary dials, matching encryption symbols, all tied into real-world decoding techniques. Now these puzzles feed into the resistance network. Maybe you decode the location of a weapon's drop. Maybe you expose a traitor inside your cell. Or maybe you uncover a Templar transmission that ties into the cipher disk, connecting the Assassin-Templar war to the bigger conflict. It's more so a slow burn system that rewards you if you pay attention. Traditional assassinations are back, and they are better than ever before. We need to bring back black box missions back into Assassin's Creed, and this could be the game for it. So each major target in this game gets the full treatment. Multi-layered missions that play out like a miniature Hitman level, except wrapped in that, classic Assassin's Creed black box style. You'll gather intel, scout entrances, talk to informants, and uncover at least 3 distinct kill opportunities for each target. Want to poison their wine at a meeting? You can. Prefer to snipe them from across a plaza? Sure, I guess. I mean, you can have a silencer on that rifle. Or maybe you go the traditional route, a silent close-up hidden blade kill in a crowd. And unlike Assassin's Creed Shadows, where the main targets don't really build a strong narrative since you can eliminate them in any order, this game makes sure that every assassination mission is story focused and pushes it forward in a meaningful way. These won't be random bad people the game tosses at you to take down. They'll be collaborators, traitors, and most importantly, full-on Templars. Some kills are designed to feel cinematic, using slow motion finishes, time of day shifts, and even environmental storytelling, like assassinating a propaganda minister inside a theatre mid-performance, or taking out a high-ranking officer during a Paris blackout. Remember Maxwell Roth from Assassin's Creed Syndicate? Yeah, that's the cinematic assassinations we'll be bringing back. This system to me brings back the heart of what made Assassin's Creed Assassination so satisfying. And that right there is the idea. Assassin's Creed Resistance, a darker, more grounded take on the series. I really wanted to show how a World War II setting could actually work in Assassin's Creed if it leaned into what made the older games so special. So that stealth, story, and that constant tension between order and freedom. Of course, there's so much more that can be explored, like modern day sections, side characters, or even post-war repercussions. But I wanted to keep this video focused and digestible. Maybe I'll expand it in the future. And hey, if you have a concept for a hypothetical Assassin's Creed game and want it turned into a video like this, send me an email at thehiddenoneac@gmail.com. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with all of that said, I will see you in the next one.